everyone, my name is Kat Savage and I'm a professional artist, clinical hypnotherapist and wellbeing expert working with those in the creative arts sector. In my line of work, I get to meet some amazing, colourful people, from actors to artists, people who live their lives by their own rules, fueled by passion and determination to bring their unique talents into the world. I wanted to discover what it took for people to leave the usual 9 to 5 and hop on a dream, to capture their bravest moments and share these meaningful conversations with you, so that together we can explore the ideas, emotions and moments that could potentially change our lives too. So let's keep talking, have some fun and enjoy the show. This week on the show, we speak to local artist Rosie Burns. Rosie's inspired by light and life, and her work can be broadly split into two, the figure and the landscape. Although she is also quite the agent provocateur when it comes to responding to the political climate, issues surrounding gender, race and equality, all through her fabulous pieces. She has exhibited in some rather special places, but feels most at home in a woodshed, with an old sentimental paint container, a handful of brushes, and all situated in the wild, wild countryside. It gives me great pleasure to introduce you to the vibrant and magical world of Rosie Burns. Rosie Burns, welcome to The Brave Moments.
Hello, Kat. How you doing?
I'm good. How's your day been so far?
Oh, fantastic. I've been out in the woods playing with the wild things, doing bushcrafts and cooking cupcakes on a campfire and making boats out of wood and leaves and playing silly games. It's fantastic.
Oh, that sounds idyllic. On the flip side of that, I've been trying to lose some weight recently, so I've just been doing a Zumba workout and I'm absolutely knackered, to be honest. But there you go. That's how our days are differing.
Totally different days.
So the first thing I want to do is, obviously, you are an artist. Da-da!
Yeah.
How would you describe your art to the outsider?
I work in, whichever media kind of takes my fancy at the time. I do what I consider to be quite grown-up, figurative landscape painting. I work from the nude and make prints. And I kind of continuously adventure in different media. Printmaking and painting currently. Ceramic sculpture when I have a kiln.
Ooh.
And I've been known to wood carve, but I haven't done that for quite a long time now.
Oh my goodness, it sounds great. I do actually own a couple of your prints in terms of your cards, your gift cards, not realising that I bought them and they were yours until I got in touch and I was like, hang on a minute, I recognise that art.
I know that.
I've got that upstairs in my card collection, which is lovely. I really, really like your art. I think it's kind of a bit goddessy on one side. And then, as you said, like the landscapey stuff it's so southwest England. That's the only way I can describe it. The colours that you pick up on are the only colours to describe this part of the world, which is really, really beautiful. How have things changed for you through lockdown? Like, what have you worked on through the lockdown period?
I made a selection of paintings from a big adventure to New Zealand, which is something completely different. But the colours, the light is actually very similar to the southwest of England. So big skies, frothy seas and kind of big landscapes. And then I got completely obsessed with the pebbles on the boulder bank at Westwood Ho and made some paintings of those. And then in between lockdowns, there was a short window where I could go to life drawing classes. So I made a series of male and female nudes. And the women are goddesses. They're Inanna and Ishtar and Venus and kind of significant feminine, really. Whereas the men are marigold men. So they are kind of classic poses, like Rodin's Thinker, because models who work with artists take those kind of poses. But they are wearing neon marigolds. And rather than holding a a sword or they're holding a bottle of furniture polish. So, and they're it's all about questioning how we engender men and women, and how the kind of religiosity of the Western world is very male. And there aren't very many. I mean, you have the Mary Magdalene figure, certainly in Christian Western culture, but there aren't any really feisty women. And men are generally depicted as the sort of godly warrior, not as the domestic. So it's kind of playing with that idea. So I made a new series of those during lockdown. And I also made a series of Japanese woodcut prints, which are the little tiny infographics that the government was throwing at us. You know, the two little people with the heart that's spread out to socially distance, and a little person standing in a circle to self-isolate. And I made them into woodcuts and put the figures on toilet rolls because it was a kind of a way into this sort of amorphous instruction, and the fact that you couldn't buy loo roll in the first lockdown. So I had fun.
So I'm going to take you back into your childhood. Here we go. What were you like as a child? What is one of your favourite memories?
When I went to playgroup, it was suggested that I might have interaction problems with other children. And they sent a child psychologist in. But what they hadn't clocked was the fact that there was an endless supply of paper and paint on an easel that I could just use. So why would I want to go on the slide or go to story time if I could just... So I was quite a loner, and always wanting to draw things and make things, and kind of an eccentric little creature. My mother called me Maud, because when she was trying to get me to do normal little girl things, I was a bit maudlin. So why can't I go and make mud pies? Why can't I go and draw with the trees? And yes, I was making clay mice with the kids this afternoon with the clay out of the riverbed, and we were absolutely filthy. It was wonderful. It was fantastic.
What smell reminds you of home back then when you were a kid, and what memories does it provoke?
Straw and blackberries.
Oh.
And that smell, the really, really sweet, sticky black finger smell of picking blackberries. The first 8 years of my life was spent in a tiny little village on the Hampshire-Berkshire border. And we had a wheat field behind the house, and we'd go out and make dens in the straw before it was baled and make blackberry pies. And so those two smells of sort of hot straw, of hot cut wheat and blackberries, it takes me straight back to being about 6. Just, like a magic wand.
Oh, I tell you what, your parents did a good thing, definitely. And I think about sort of time back then, and time now, and I get a little concerned that the kids of today are spending too much time on technology, and that's probably just me being very broad opinionated. But I do worry that those little bent heads over machinery is destroying that connection with the land in the way that we used to have it.
Yes. That's one of the reasons that I love doing the bush camp, forest school type stuff on a Friday, because it's being with tiny people doing exactly that. And I think they're fantastic. They know the birds, they know the plants, they know the names of the trees, and it's a joy. And they're such confident small people to be around and full of conversation compared to others that I've worked with in primary schools who just don't have it, and they want to tell you about their Pokemon and their computer game, which I know nothing about.
I know nothing.
Sort of sit there blankly going, oh, no, I don't know what you mean.
Can you remember your childhood room? What was your favourite thing in it?
Yes, we lived in a semi-converted freezing cold chapel.
Oh, wow.
Which was, yes, all part of the eccentric picture. And we were in the attic, me and my middle sister, and there was a window that looked over the field. And in the winter, we'd have Jack Frost on the inside and the patterns on the glass. And then you'd watch the seasons change. You'd watch the winter wheat come up. And that sort of having that window on the natural world, even though it was it's an agricultural landscape, was a magical thing. And I feel quite lost in cities. I don't have any points of reference. So yeah, it was the view out the window rather than the room itself. I remember there was, the what do you call them, purlins that hold up the roof, and our beds were under the purlins, and the purlins had supports that were wrapped in hessian.
Oh,
it was if you kept rubbing it, it went soft.
That's what she said.
So I suppose that's a kind of tactile version. Like, if you asked me what was the bed, I have no idea what the bed coat, the duvet cover was, or what the colour of the carpet was. But the view from the window and the hessian on the roof supports, yeah, they can remember those.
Being that you grew up in a chapel, did you ever tell each other ghost stories?
Oh, endlessly. I can remember my aunt's dog. They came to stay, and it dug up a human leg bone.
Oh my goodness!
And I was completely intrigued by it. I don't know where the sort of beginnings of my first degree is in archaeology, and I'm not sure if that's where it came from. But everyone was like, what do we do? Do we dig a really big hole and bury it again? Or what do we do? And so that's definitely human. And I was like, oh, yeah, it's this one in your leg. And just completely intrigued by it. But yes, then there was all sorts of stories about who did the leg belong to, and could you hear him walking up the stairs, and yeah, freaking out my little sisters completely.
So my next question was going to be, were you aware of your creativity as a child, or did someone else encourage it? But I have a feeling that you probably were quite aware of your creativity.
Yeah. Yes. If I didn't know where there was a piece of paper and something to make marks on it, then I wasn't very nice to be around. I think I've always had, since I was very small. I mean, I remember colouring in the whole of my mum's checkbook.
Oh, no.
Because I thought it was a really interesting shaped sketchbook. Both sides, so and being heinously dyslexic, had no notion that it was something that you wrote on. I just thought it was something that you would colour in.
I did something similar with my mum and dad has a very, very 80s salmon pink velvet sofa. And I must have been about 4 and found my mum's lipstick. And I was like, oh, that's obviously a crayon. And did exactly the same, but on the back of this sofa. And all I can remember is my mum going absolutely nuts. She was like, oh my God, what are we going to do? And thinking, what?
Yes, but it's beautiful.
Yeah.
I've made you a beautiful picture.
Can't you see? Yes. It's just a flower, Mum.
I did it a similar thing on it was an old leathery dining chair with the pen that was being used to label the run of beans that were going in the freezer. So kind of as permanent a pen as you could get onto this leather chair. That was, I can remember, my father was not impressed with that one. But it's a cat. I've drawn a cat on the chair. Look, there's a cat on the chair. It's completely logical to me. No.
Oh, poor parents. That's what I have to say. Oh, so I was quite a bookworm when I was a kid, and love to write now as a consequence. It's one of the most favourite ways that I have of expressing myself, much like you with your paintbrushes. Did you ever have a favourite book? And if so, what was it and why?
The Richard Scarry Rainy Day book.
And I have to ask, is it raining where you are now?
Yeah, my studio's a wooden shed at the top of the garden. and it is like being in woods, really. I can see houses in front of me, but then each side of me it's trees.
So why was that your favourite book?
Because it didn't have very many words and it had lots of pictures and you could colour them in. I can't remember. I think it was I had one of my uncles lived in the States, and I think it was an American kids book, but sort of an activity book, and it had all these crazy characters, sort of cartoony characters, sort of asking you to do different things and do spiral patterns and colour them in, and draw the rain. And so, as a rainy day book. So that I can remember that one, and it was the fact that it was a book that you didn't have to sit and read to somebody, that you could colour it in. And then after that, when I did kind of eventually start reading when I was about 10, poetry was a big thing. And there was a children's verse collection that I loved, because poetry's like painting pictures, that whole kind of thing of, and not too many words. But I mean, since then, I do write, and I use writing as a sort of venting.
So tell us a little bit about your children's book.
Well, I was working as a supply teacher, sort of topping up the art sales, as I've done for quite some time, in Southend, and working with kids who had no sort of connection with the natural world at all. I mean, they didn't, if you say, where are eggs from? They say the shop. And there was a huge gap. But Southend does have woodland and parks and the coast, and, there are natural spaces that are very accessible. So the idea was to write a series of books based on small creatures that you can find everywhere. So I started with Jenny Wren. So it's a story about the wren and the wren's life cycle. So it's kind of an educational book, but then it goes on to share stories from Aesop's fables and kind of cultural connections to the wren in Europe, the Wren Boys and St. Stephen's Day and chasing the wren. Catching the wren as a sort of druidic symbol of renewal for the new year. So it's a kind of educational natural world information book-ish that I've illustrated with pen and ink. It's a kind of a Beatrix pottery, but slightly different. It's going to be a beautiful thing as well, because I love beautiful books. And I'm working with Ollie at Blue Poppy Publishing out in Ilfracombe, and he's fantastic, and he's really helping me out. But the form filling bit is the slow. Yeah. And I sit in the studio on the laptop, and then right now I'm painting gold on a bra print as I'm talking to you. This sort of, I am an endless distraction to myself. But no, the book's underway. The Kickstarter I've got an account with Kickstarter, and I'm working on a spreadsheet to figure it all out. So,
good luck with that. I can't wait to purchase a copy. Signed, of course.
Of course. Yeah.
So here you are as a very, very creative child, drawing on your parents' furniture and rolling around in the straw. Yeah. As you grew up into your teenage years, who did you become? What music did you listen to? Who were your inspirations and why?
Well, I think the poetry thing, the first CD I bought was Bob Dylan and the Band.
Good
at
choice.
The age of 15, which is quite peculiar, when everyone else was listening to The Cure and lots of other cool things. I really liked the poetry. My mother listened to a lot of Beatles and kind of 70s stuff, but she also listened to quite a lot of opera. So doing my GCSE and A-level art, I'd listen to Tracy Chapman, mainstay in any art room still, and Bob Dylan and the Band, and Mozart. The other people that were doing it were like, can you just turn that off now? Just go.
Can't you listen to something, in quote marks, normal?
Yes, something that belongs to this decade, Rosie Burns. Just, would be quite nice.
Did you find that as you were going through your exams and things like that, did your dyslexia play into that? Like, did you find that quite tricky?
Oh, absolutely exhausting. I have to have a kind of method for organising myself. And I would painstakingly write notes and rewrite notes, and I would spend hours and hours and learn visually. So, lots of different coloured pens and yes, it was horrible. Which is one of the reasons I think that I trained to teach art, because I wanted to be a space in a school where none of that had any significance, where you didn't need to have facts in your head. You needed to be able to express yourself. I don't really understand why primary schools do exams at all, and their kids not having SATs the last 2 years, I think, has been great.
Yeah. And they've grown in confidence as a result, I think.
Yeah.
I've certainly seen it in some of the people that I privately teach music to, and having that space to just be creative as opposed to stick to certain assignments, modules, all of these types of criteria which they have to meet. It's just been wonderful for their creativity.
Completely.
And I feel like the next generation of children, if only they could be taught almost like a Steiner school or how they're teaching in like the Netherlands and things like that. If they could just be part of the world as opposed to told what the world was, then it would be so much better for them.
Definitely. And kind of creative thought process. I was in a primary yesterday and we spent the day researching Native Americans.
Wow.
Anything, they had their Chromebooks in the morning and they had to find out anything. And we talked about, and I said, well, historically, what was the costume of that tribe? If you're in the north, then you'd be wearing sealskins. But if you're on the plains, what were you wearing? What was the jewellery like? And it was fantastic. And the conversations that these kids were having, because it was free flow, and they're, their last year of primary, but 3 years ago, pre-COVID, they would have just done their SATs and have been absolutely wiped. But their creative thought process and the conversations they were having were way ahead of conversations that I've heard of the same age group in the last 10 years. It was fantastic. It was a real joy. Oh. So, I hope that does maintain, this kind of creative way of thinking and communicating is so valuable.
Absolutely. And it means that when these young people are coming into their teenage years, they'll be more self-aware, I think, and original thinkers as opposed to just being told the information that they just need to learn parrot fashion. Talking of being self-aware, I'm interested in you as a teenager. Who were you inspired by? Who impressed you when you were growing up? What were your influences?
I was around a lot of musicians. I mean, there was a lot of sort of school bands and cool little club nights and that kind of thing. But in myself, I was looking at the Matisse line drawings and the Picasso blue period, and proper freaky deaker, and kind of. And fairly oblivious to popular culture, really. I think
and nothing's changed.
No, exactly as it was then. Carrying
All power
on.
To you, sister. I love this question that I'm about to ask you, and it elicits all kinds of reactions. So I'm going to ask you, can you remember the first time you ever really lied, and what was it about?
Do you know, I really can.
Awesome.
Well, I was about 5 and I've got 2 younger sisters, and there's only 5 years between the 3 of us. So my mother was living in a semi-converted chapel with 3 children under 5, and I was learning to read, in inverted commas, and we went round to the neighbour, and she had Babe in arms, my little sister, and Sophie, who'd just wander off constantly and be a worry, and she said, "Oh, go and get your reading book and you can read to Mrs. whoever it was next one over." And I went back to the house, and I hadn't been reading to her. I'd been pretend reading. I'd heard other kids read in school, and I was so mortified that this woman was going to actually sit with me and, run her finger along the page, and I would just do what I did at school and just say the letters and not read, which is what I convinced my mother I did. I put my foot through the glass back door.
Oh, no.
And I went back with the book and said, "There's been a horrible accident." I shut the door and it smashed. Which is such a huge lie. I had so much rage. I went back and I kicked my foot through the door, got the reading book, and then stood there going, "Oh," and made up that lie. It just broke. I mean, if anyone looked at it, they could see quite obviously that a 5-year-old foot had gone through the glass panel in the bottom of the door. But yeah, that was, and I still know the feeling of, yes, I'm not a very good liar, obviously.
That makes me smile. Did you ever tell her when you were older?
Yes.
Oh, that's
no.
good.
She came back and said, "You put your foot through the door, didn't you, Rosie?" Oh, yes, I did. So it didn't last very long, and yes, yeah. My mother died when I was 19, but through the time she was in my life, she'd always say, "Don't bother trying to lie. You know, it's completely, I can read you like a book. It's written all over your face," which is actually quite good advice for life, because, you know, you can get yourself in a real pickle lying, and it's generally not worth it. But yeah.
Especially with your mothers. I remember my mum had something which I have actually mentioned in another podcast when talking about this question. My mum had something which has come to be known in our family as mum's telling the truth eyes, and she does this thing when she thinks you're lying, where she'll just stare at you in the eyes until you confess. It's a gift.
Yeah.
She's magic. She goes, "Is that really what you want to tell me right now?" And then you just go, no, it's not true.
And you can't help but just go, "It was actually like this, and I can't imagine that."
I swear to God, she is a living witch, that woman. Shout out Patty Savage, yay. So can you remember, in complete contrast to that, can you remember your first love? What impression did they leave on you about love itself?
Yes, I can. And I think it was the sort of notion of adventure with another person, and going on long walks and skinny dipping in a river, and having, you know, that love is about sharing adventure, you know, as well as the beautiful things and the scary things and the frightening things and the upsetting things. And I think that, yeah, first love was probably that whole idea of when you're in love, you share.
I love that. That's such a good answer. And as you're saying that, I'm thinking back and thinking of all those people that I've been lucky enough to share, and not so lucky enough to share my love with. And it is about that give and take and that creation between the two. Yeah. So when you left school, what happened next? How did you channel your creativity?
Well, it was quite, the end of school was a bit nasty, really, because my mother had skin cancer and then it became lymphatic, and ended up in her bones. And I was, my father was a long haul pilot, so he was kind of in and out of life. And my mum was absolutely insistent that I went on an adventure. I'd lined up a place to do archaeology and sociology at Leicester with the idea of doing the archaeological illustration, and she found an advert for Gap in Reader's Digest, and this was in the November, and I'd been, you know, doing agency work. I've been working in kitchens, and actually all really good things, because I've lent on those things when I've needed money, right the way through my life. But it was the November, and she said, "You've got an interview next week in Reading. You're going to Israel in January." And she said, "Well, you've earned some money, so you can pay for your flight, and you're going to go and live with Palestinians and teach English."
Oh, wow.
What? So I did, and it was absolutely amazing. And I was in Aroer, which is a little township, Palestinian Bedouin, south of Beersheba in the Negev desert. And it was fantastic. And I took my watercolour tin. I've still got the same tin I've had since I was 15. And I hadn't been to the desert before. And the light and the space and the sky and So I had that. And I had the Bedouin women with the embroidered dresses and the whole kind of culture of it, and learning a bit of Arabic. Huge creative outlet. And then there was an advert for volunteers on an excavation in Nazareth that summer, sort of after the 6 months of volunteer teaching, it came to an end. And I turned up on this dig near Nazareth, and their illustrator had spat the dummy I don't think I ever met him. He was described as an eccentric Frenchman. And I said, well, I can draw. I'm an eccentric Englishwoman. What do you think? Bold as brass, age 19. And I learned how to do the cartography for an excavation there and then. So the creative edge has never stopped. And then I went to Leicester and I met the illustrator for Leicester University Archaeology Department, Debbie, who's an amazing woman. And I was like, I want to do this. She said, well, you're already doing it.
That's a good woman.
Yeah.
That's a really good woman. And your mum as well. In the time in her life where she must have been incredibly scared to push you to do something amazing with your life. I mean,
phenomenal. Yeah.
If you could meet each other again today, what do you think she would say to you now?
You still have a despicable taste in men. I think that's probably the first thing that she'd say.
And she's got tell the truth eyes as well, by the sounds of it.
Oh, yeah, completely. Yes, and then she would say, the next thing would probably be, did you really sell a naked man in Wells Cathedral? She was, and no, not a real naked man, a print of a naked man. She was a Sunday school teacher, so she was this sort of funny mixture of the house being full of her nudes she drew, and she did sculpture. She was colourblind, so her portraits were always green as far as I was concerned. But, another green one, nice. But her charcoal drawings and her sculptures were amazing. So the nude was all quite usual in the house. But she was also a Sunday school teacher, so she had this sort of slightly conservative edge as a person. And she'd love the fact that I think it would make her laugh and laugh and laugh that I had a Marigold Man print in Wells Cathedral and I sold it. That would really make her giggle, I think.
Oh, it sounds like when you were growing up, you had quite an amazing time with her, and thank you for sharing that with us on the show today. What was the most challenging thing about your job, and what were some of the highlights, other than being told by someone that you're already a cartographer?
Just get on with it.
Yeah.
Well, I got to the end of my degree and I really wanted to do, and I had some work published through the Hebrew University, and I really wanted to do a master's in cartography and archaeological illustration. And I had this big plan about digitising it, which is just at the point that eMaps, who are now Google Maps, who are now, the Google Earth guys, about doing a master's that could digitise maps. But I had no money and, strangely enough, couldn't get funding to do a master's between Harvard and Jerusalem. So I trained to teach in Exmouth. And so I sort of took a bit of a right angle from that direction. Although I have done illustration for various digs since, sort of off and on. And I trained to teach secondary art and design. I met my ex-husband, who was a music teacher, and followed him to Jersey. So I found myself in teaching part-time initially in a Catholic boys' school in Jersey, which was a terribly male environment, aged 23, 24.
Oh, crikey. That must have come with its own set of problems, being a female and a male environment in your 20s.
Oh, yeah. Sort of, you learn the sort of feminist edge. I mean, Mum had taken us to Greenham Common on several occasions. So the sort of, and it was a very feminine upbringing because, there was Mum and my two sisters, and Dad was kind of in and out in my early childhood. And so sort of, it was a little bit of a baptism of fire. But I was then back in an art room, and I had a ceramic kiln, and I had a beautiful printing press, and I had an easel that I could put a canvas on. So I spent 5.5, 6 years doing my work and teaching in an art room, which was magical. And at that point, I suppose that sort of spreads nicely into the bravest moment thing. There was a gallery in St Helier in Jersey, John Fall Fine Art, and someone had said to me, "I'll just take some work down there." And I had wood carvings and some prints and some watercolours and some small oil paintings. And I rang him up and said, I'm teaching at the boys' school. Can I come in and see you with some work? You might be interested. And I went in and I said, "I don't really know what I am." And he said, "You're an artist. Just carry on doing what you're doing." And I said, "Well, shouldn't I be a sculptor or a painter or a printmaker?" And he said, "No, you're an artist." And that kind of taking that on board and not putting myself into a box of I'm an archaeological illustrator or I'm an art teacher or I'm a painter, was probably the bravest moment for me, just to say I'm an artist.
What changed? What changed in your life? What stacked up for you when you made that realisation?
Well, it was then, he said, "Just put a body of work together." And I was like, "Well, what do you mean?" And he said, "Well, some more sculptures, some more prints, some more oil paintings, some more, have put together your worldview." And then I was approached by the Catholic Church in Jersey, who just opened a little centre with a gallery space upstairs. It was kind of a meditative prayer type space, but they wanted the upstairs to be art. And so I was one of the first artists to exhibit in there. So my first solo show was a bit of everything. And I had nude prints and oil paintings and wood carvings, some ceramic sculpture. And, this is my worldview. I'm an artist. This is me sharing my worldview. And it's kind of gone on from there, that having that, well, this is who I am. And if I come across people who are like, "Oh, well, you do too many different things." It's like, initially galleries were like, "Well, what are you?" "Well, I'm an artist." "Are you interested in selling the oil paintings or are you interested in selling the prints?" So then galleries started to kind of go, "Oh, well, you're a printmaker because we like those and we can sell those." And "Oh, you're an oil painter. Oh, we like those so we can sell." So just sort of carrying on and not being pigeonholed and being brave and just saying, "Well, that's what I do."
How did the people around you that you loved, how did they respond to what you were doing, especially your partner at the time and your family? Did you feel uplifted? Was there any jealousy? Did you feel that you found yourself and it changed your view of other people? What happened to your relationships as you stepped into yourself?
Well, the sort of eccentric line of my life, it all went a little bit wrong. In that the man that I married hopped into bed with someone else. So I booked a round the world ticket.
Because you're a sassy kind of gal.
Yeah. And went off with a backpack for 3 months. Rang my ex-husband on Valentine's Day and his new lady answered the phone.
Oh my goodness. That must have been, I mean, half of me is thinking to myself, isn't it funny how relationships fall apart when a woman steps into her power? And the other half of me really feels for you, being through that situation myself. Very, very similarly, actually, when I went off to music college, I had exactly the same situation happen. And to build yourself back up and to keep going, I know in my bones how hard that is.
Yes, yeah. I mean, the kind of upside of it is I was in New York, in Central Park. It was 2005, and it was when Christo and Jean-Claude had hung the whole of Central Park with the orange flags.
Beautiful.
And it was phoning from a call box in Central Park at that point in time. So it was also a kind of, well, look at where I am. Look at this art that I'm in. Look at the life that so there was kind of, oh, well, that's done with, moving on.
Yeah. And also to have that kind of closure as well, whilst in the middle of a massive life moment for yourself.
Yeah.
I mean, that's bravery in itself to be able to just carry on and immerse yourself in that moment.
just yes, and I did, and I left the island, and I moved back to South Devon, and yes, was living in a house with a garage underneath. So I painted the floor and painted the walls, and I sold art out of the garage and cleaned holiday homes, and yes, did a bit of teaching, same stuff. so same as I've done since, really, a bit and a bit, and yeah, it's so yes, it was the brave moment has, and it's been ongoing, and yeah, and I think that the sort of need to be a maker has affected relationships all through my life, because yes, I've had other relationships where I've wanted to be in a place and making, with a partner who wanted to travel and not be rooted. And I love travel, I really do, but I need a home base.
Yeah.
And it's the need for a space to work in, to have a studio, to have What
advice would you give to other people in this situation where they're just coming into their artistic process, their artistic journey, and they are finding that success? What advice would you give them about balancing that relationship, and how did you cope with that at the time?
Until probably 2 years ago, badly. To be brutally honest, because it is difficult. I think my current super duper partner is an amazing man who is a creative, and he gets it, and he's a leather worker, and he always found it difficult that he wanted to go off and do his making. So he encourages me to go up to my studio and get on with it. It's being interested in the other person's creative process rather than a product or the end result, or, having that to share is quite magical.
So during this time where you had your brave moment, you travelled around the world, and discovered various different capacities of relationship, what were you discovering or remembering about yourself at that time? And how has that changed or evolved into what you're discovering and remembering about yourself now?
I think it's the whole thing of be who you are, and knowing that I am a strong and resilient person who will keep going. I've watched a lot of creative people, especially in education, get quite stuck. Amazing designers who are teaching textiles in schools who have lost their lust for textiles, and that's who they are, because they're worried about having to pay the mortgage, they're worried about this, they're worried about that, they're worried about, and they need to be doing the right thing rather than actually serving themselves. And I have been in some fairly precarious situations and had to clean toilets and but I've also been able to do what I want to do. And people are like, well, why cleaning holiday homes, you're working as a KP in a restaurant, and so but that enables me to be me. And I think it's not being afraid, and I learned that at that point, having had pretty cruisy ride, having got A-levels, got a university place, worked with a Bedouin, and worked with the Hebrew University, all these amazing things, and then got a job in Jersey in a boys' school, and then sort of like, but realising that you don't have to follow that kind of expected route to be okay. That you can go and work in a cafe. It's fine. And
I was talking to a woman called Megan Cameron, who's a ballet dancer, and we were talking about that, and we quoted it as muggle jobs. The jobs where you're learning about the real world so that you can live in your magical one.
Exactly. No, perfect. Muggle jobs, yes. I've got such a long list of muggle jobs. But I think that that's part of the bravery of being a creative, of saying, I am an artist, whether it's performance or whether it's writing, or that you have muggle jobs.
Yeah.
And you don't always need a muggle job. You know, sometimes it's all sweet, and there's always the hope that everything will take off to a point where you'd never have to have a muggle job again. But I quite like working in the woods with kids.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
actually, because we made clay mice with clay out of the bottom of the stream that are in the fire now, and next week there'll be ceramic sculptures.
See, so that sounds like one of the magic jobs.
So I think the more you do, the more the muggle job becomes part of the creative thing as well. You know,
absolutely. You merge the worlds, don't you?
Yeah.
You merge them. So there is that magic and creativity that spills over into another job. And as Mary Poppins likes to put it, you find the fun and snap the job's a game.
Exactly. That's the one.
Dun, 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 jazz hands. So when you put yourself out there, when you put your work out there or entrust it with someone else, how do you find the courage, and how do you approach galleries or even shops or anything like that? For those that have a collection of stuff that they've started, what do they have to do next, and what can they expect to happen?
It's all, I've been looking, the whole lockdown thing, I was sort of looking at this and thinking, am I doing this right? I had to look for some advice. And there's lots of sort of organisations that you can pay to sort of network you and all this kind of thing. I think you just have to keep doing it and find spaces that you think would work for you. I've been in touch with the Burton Art Gallery and Museum in Bideford in the last week. I said, hi, I'm here. I actually rocked up covered in mud after forest school, stinking of campfire, and said, I'm an artist and a teacher, and I sent you an email, but I didn't really get a really satisfactory response. So I'd quite like to do some workshops with you and just being brave enough to say, hi, I'm an artist. You're a gallery. How you doing? I think there's actually quite a lot of merit in that. And don't ever think that a connection on Instagram or Facebook isn't worth pursuing. You know, even if it's a funny little summer fete somewhere, you know, you're still getting your work. I mean, what's the point of making your work? Well, you're sharing your worldview, you know, so go and share it. That's how I see it.
It seems such an obvious thing, doesn't it? When you are a creative person and someone says, well, you must share your work in order to get some response. You're like, really? That's what I have to do? Oh, God. And then that imposter syndrome kicks in half the time. But when you do, and you do get that response that you're hoping for, it's priceless, isn't it? It's wonderful. Just the best feeling ever. And
80% of the time you get a no, don't like it.
Yeah.
But but the 20% and then we could do this and then we could do that and what about her? It makes that 80% disappear, and it's connecting with the universe, you know, because the gallery doesn't really matter. I always think of it as, you know, I got a picture into the ING Discerning Eye at the Mall Galleries, which is selected by various folk. But it was the first time it wasn't in the flesh. And I was like, online show. But it's still engaging my idea with the world, you know, and I've got an attic full of work and it is, what's the point? If it's out there, it's shared. And if you sell some, you can buy some more toys to make some more. So it's...
And that's the beauty when you're an artist, isn't it? And I put that in quote marks because you can just go and buy as much stuff as you like, because one week you might be a silversmith and the next week you might be a sculptor. So
exactly. You've got to have the toys. So you've got to get it out there and you've got to think of it. I'm not very... I know some makers who are quite sort of fond of what they've produced, or I really like that one. I'd quite like to keep that one. I have absolutely no interest whatsoever. The people who've been my framer over the last 20 years have been horrified by the way I treat my work. Just like, what have you done to this canvas? Oh, it's in the attic, and then it was in the van for a bit, and then it's in the back of my car. Well, you took it here and here, and it's like, did you wrap it? No. Just so I think that's quite that can be a really difficult thing if you're quite sort of precious about, and I just want to do the next one. There's too many, there's not enough time.
That's very zen. I know that when you're first starting out in the art ways, sometimes that first thing that gets accepted by the world, that can be quite hard to let go of. But it sounds like you've been quite Buddhist about the whole situation.
It's not really interested.
Not your thing.
I don't know where that comes from, but no. Do I get anxious about having enough paper in the studio? Oh yeah. Do I get anxious about the fact I've broken another frame in the attic when I'm trying to sort out work for a show? No. It's like, oh no, I've got to go to the framer again. Can you put more glass in this one, please?
I love that you're more about the creative process as opposed to the result. And I think that's probably, like you were saying about relationships and like you were saying about all of your art, the fact that you're more intrigued and curious about the creative process than you are about what happens at the end. I mean, it's no wonder that you've continued your journey with art thus far, because you've got that curiosity for life then, haven't you? You never just stop, or you never just get blocks. You're just carrying on that curiosity.
Adventure.
That is the word I'm going to associate with you for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
So talking about your wonderful work, what do you think it is that you're trying to show people in your work, and what do you hope they can see?
I think that I did a residency on the South Bank at the Oxo Tower Wharf building, kind of behind the Oxo Tower. And I spent quite a lot of the 10 days having an argument with Gavin Turk, who's one of the Saatchi artists. He's a neon sculpture guy, installation. And he was saying he doesn't want his work to be a narrative. And I said, well, but you're a maker. You're living in the 21st century making art. So it is a narrative. It has to be a narrative, because it's a narrative as much as the Sistine Chapel ceiling, because that was narrating the story that was wanted in the ceiling then, and you're putting these words and lights and images in, so it has to be. So I think that for me, my work is my narrative. It's my concern with gender. It's my concern with kind of human preoccupation. So the prints that I'm finishing now, there's a holograph print of a bra, and I'm not a small person, so it's a big bra, and it's called "Look Me in the Eyes," and it's that kind of going into 46 in 2 weeks' time, and still going into a DIY shop in Devon, and can I help you, dear? Do you know what you need? It's like, yeah. And
it's not my first time.
You can lift your chin and look at my face and not my boobs. So there's that narrative which is ongoing, and the whole kind of global scenario at the moment of people categorizing people by their sexuality, by their gender, by the color of their skin, by their so the second print that goes with the bra is a pair of knickers, which are also not that small, and it's where we all come from, because it's talking to other teachers about the Black Lives Matter and this kind of where are you from that kids have, even in primary schools, which I had a lot to contend with in Southend, which is quite a right-wing city, and this is working with under 10s. Where are you from? And it's like we need to address this. So that's a big narrative that's ongoing in my head. So the knickers are where we all come from, because you can't grow a whole human without a womb.
Yeah.
Where are you from? I'm from a womb. Where are you from? Well, you're from a womb as well, obviously, because that's how you make human beings. There's that, but there's also the natural world, and the fact that I live in one of the most phenomenally beautiful parts of the universe that I can think of, and I've got the sea and the sky and the tide and the light and the And that's something to share and be valued and to enjoy, and it's beautiful and awesome, and so it's a narrative.
I love it.
Mr. Turk.
Mic drop.
But no. So, yeah, that's what I'm doing. I'm sharing my narrative. I'm sharing the things that I think are worth having a conversation about.
And long may it continue.
Yeah.
When was the moment that you thought, this is what I want to do for a living? This is my calling.
When I was 5. And I got the ruler across the back of my calves because I couldn't say the alphabet. Well, I could, but all the letters weren't necessarily in the right order. In fact, I did know the alphabet, but not in the order that you're taught it in school, because they don't really do that anymore. It's all phonics, which is much, much more approachable. But I said to the primary school teacher who slapped me across the back of the legs with a wooden ruler, when I grow up, I'm going to be an artist. And some days I still think that when I grow up, I'm going to be an artist. And then other days, no, that's who I am. Oh, yeah.
I say the same thing about adulting. I'm like, when I grow up, I'm going to be an adult. Oh, no. No, I don't want that, actually.
No,
Take it back.
No, I don't think on those lines. No.
Isn't it amazing how teachers can help or hinder you in such a massive way that you hold with you for the rest of your life? And I had a very similar situation with an English teacher who just didn't like me. She just didn't like me because I was doing stuff outside of school, and it just so happened that it always clashed with her lesson because it was at the end of the school day. Yeah. And as a consequence, she'd mark me down on purpose to the point where my parents got an English tutor that I had after school, and I loved English because, again, writing was a massive passion of mine. Yeah. And I couldn't figure it out. And on one of my last papers that I had with her before the situation was changed, she'd given me an E for this paper, which I knew was at least an A or a B. So I went to my headmistress at the time, who was fabulous. She was called Babs Dunball, and she was from Northern Ireland, so she had a really thick accent. Sorry, Irish people listening, I've just offended a whole country. And I got her to read it because she read English at university. So she read it and she was like, I don't understand why you've got an E. You should have an E. Yes. So I was like, okay, well, at least it's not me going mad. So I can remember her calling in this particular teacher and sitting us down. And we were there for about an hour with my mum. I was crying. And then eventually it came out that she thought that I didn't deserve the marks that I should get because I was never in her class. And that's what it came down to. And I just thought, you absolute bleep at the time. And it stayed with me all my life to the point where I've questioned everything that I've written. Yeah. And it's really horrible. And I'm really glad that you turned around to that teacher at such a young age and went, well, you know what? Here's 2 fingers. I'm going to do it anyway. Because I wish I had the bravery to do that. I
did it all the way through with the A-levels. They was sort of, it's like, oh, well, you know, you're quite an academic. We know you're dyslexic, but you did very well in your GCSEs. We weren't expecting that. And I said, okay, I quite like to do English because we had an English teacher who was heavily into Wordsworth. Just like, the romantics. Yay, the late poets. Just awesome. So, you know, which I probably was reading Wordsworth on the loo when I was about 14. So English, theology, because it's, you know, basically having a fight about ethics and morals and Christianity. And then I wanted to do politics because it's having an argument. And also it's like, well, if I'm going to be in the world, if you have to be a grown-up, then I quite like to know how it works. So, and I'm going to do art. No, you can't do that. I'm doing art.
It's not a real subject, is it? No.
And they said, what do you mean you're just going to do it? I said, we're just going to do it. So no, you're dyslexic. You can't do 4 A-levels. I'm doing it. I'm going to get a copy of the syllabus and I'm going to do it. And the head of art was just like, oh, no, I got rid of her. She'd write lovely things on my report like, Rosie needs to focus on her shadows. She wasn't quite of the same bakery as me on the fruit and nut bread. That was quite. But in the same breath, you know, it's the same way. It's like you with your writing, you kind of have to go, yeah, but I'm still doing it. So you're still so wrong.
Click, hair toss.
Exactly. And I think that it is that you're an artist. That's what I am.
I'm glad that you still tell yourself that you're an artist and that you believe yourself too. That makes me super, super happy. If you could meet your 100-year-old self, what do you think they would say about your life now, and what advice would they give you going forward?
Spend less time worrying and more time doing. Well, that's what I say to myself a lot of the time anyway. Just get on with it.
I'm going to ask you one more question before we do your quick fire question round. Where and when or were/are you the most happiest?
Painting, sculpting, writing, when you're just doing it. You're not thinking about it and you lose a day.
And you're in that flow state.
Yeah.
Oh, bliss.
Yeah. That's definitely my happiest place to be. And other than that, it's watching weird things on the telly in bed.
I'm so with you. Okay, are you ready for your quick fire question round, Rosie Burns?
Oh, I am.
Awesome. All right, here we go. Favourite art medium?
Winter printing, summer paint.
Ooh, nice. I love a good juxtaposition. Favourite brushes?
Cheap acrylic ones for oil because I trash them. And Kandinsky sable for watercolour, darling.
Oh, bougie. What do you love most about yourself?
Resilience.
I love that. That is actually something that I like about myself. So we can share that. I'm giving you a little fist bump through the computer. If you were to be reincarnated, what would you come back as?
A cat.
Oh, nice. Why?
Because I always think of cats as observers. So all you have to do is eat, sleep and watch. How nice.
Maybe you're a cat now. You just don't realise it.
Yeah.
What is your most treasured possession?
My painting.
The one which you were given when you were 15?
Yeah.
Oh, I love that.
If I don't know where it is, I get a little bit panicky, which is ridiculous because it's a battered. It was black originally, and now it's totally. I've got it in my hands now, and it's the palette changes, and I buy different paint to put in it. But if I don't know where it is, I get a little bit twitchy. So, whereas everything else in my life, I probably wouldn't notice if it was there or not. Which is not very good for purses and phones.
Best piece of advice you've ever received?
I think it was probably John Fall, actually. You're an artist, get on with it. You know, that's what you're an artist. That's, same thing.
Song you absolutely must sing along to in the car or when painting?
Oh, any Beatles song. Pretty much anything from the 90s. Anything within my collection I will sing along to. And I'm not a singer.
Excellent. That's even better.
At all. I worked on a project in Australia with this amazing Aboriginal woman, and I was sort of her arty sidekick. She's a massive creative and she's a songwriter. Phenomenal voice and can pretty much pick up, play and record anything you throw at her. And she said, we're doing this music project in the school at sort of the end of the time I was working with her. And she said, you need to sing. I was like, no, don't be funny. I said, I can do that. No, I can help you. I can move I can be a roadie. And she recorded me and it's just, oh dear, no.
But someone out there will like what you've done.
Just
guaranteed. You can have dinner with one of your favourite people in the world. Who is it and where do you take them?
Can they be dead?
Of course.
I quite like to take Picasso to a fish restaurant in St Malo. And
specific, I like it.
Well, they do this amazing seafood platter. I haven't been there for years, but and just talk to him about his opinion of women.
Oh, that would be a good conversation.
Because I think, having been and still totally intrigued by his depiction of women, because they're not always sexy or beautiful. They're not always, he's that. Yeah, I'd take Picasso for a fishy feast in St Malo and ask him about his depiction of women.
Talking of food, what would be your last meal on earth?
You know that French restaurant in St Malo that does the amazing seafood platters?
Maybe Picasso's like the angel of death taking you to the other side.
I was going to say, that's the one.
Finally, what makes you smile daily?
Oh, most things.
Oh, that's a good answer.
Yeah, this morning I got up and it's like, oh, is it going to rain? Do I get on the bike or I don't really want to go in the car. I don't really like cars. But I'm going to get really wet and it's going to be really muddy and wet when I get there. And I got on the bike and it was a bit drizzly, but it was so stupidly beautiful. The really black, dramatic sky. And I pedalled from Bideford down the estuary towards Instow. And the wild garlic was amazing. It was like starlight. And it just made me, smile.
Oh.
So that, but I feel a bit like that every day. Even if you wake up thinking, oh, I don't want to do this. I got to do a tax return. I hate myself. If you just sort of go for a little walk around, I've got a garden, which I'm very blessed to have. I just go for a walk around that and see one of the goldfish who thinks they're a shark in the pond. I just think I'm so blessed. This makes me smile.
Rosie Burns, you have survived your quickfire question round. I'm going to give you the solidarity clap. Here it comes. Hooray!
Thank you so much, Kat.
It's been so fun today. So just before we go, what advice would you like to give to the world right now? And second to that, what advice specifically to those that are just starting out on their artistic endeavours?
Well, I think with the whole kind of state of Europe, having families scattered all over the place and not being able to see them, we all need to know where we all come from, and that's a womb. I think that would be my kind of advice to the world. You're a human. Treat others as you want to be treated yourself. And in terms of art practice, just get on with it. Just do it, and share it. So you're making, if you're a visual maker, you make for other people to see it. If you're a recording artist, you make for other people to hear it. Do it.
I love it. Brilliant advice and a wonderful podcast and a delicious look into your magical realm. And thank you so, so much for being on the podcast today. It's been such a joy.
Thank you, Kat. That's fantastic. Good fun.
If people have enjoyed listening to you today, where can they find you on social media? And more importantly, where can they buy your work?
I've got a website, which is rosieburnsartist.com, which is quite Googleable. And then the social media handles from there. She's just doing the completely dyslexic thing, thinking, what is your Facebook address? Oh dear. What's the Instagram handle? I think it's Burns_Rosie, because you had to fill in a form, you see, to set up an account. And obviously I put them the wrong way round.
I'm looking at it right now.
Yeah,
and it is Burns
yes.
_Rosie. So you're right. 10 points for Gryffindor. And I can see your brilliant pants on there as well. The ones that you painted.
Yeah,
printed.
Yeah. No, they are funny. I mean, it's not, it also, sometimes I think it sounds all terribly serious, and then you see the image and you're like, oh, that's funny.
It does make me smile. That's been my daily smile today, other than obviously
Brilliant.
Talking to you in person. So
Yeah.
thank you so much. And,
No, thank you, Kat. It was good fun.
Let's catch up again soon.
Yes, definitely. Bye. Bye.
I love Rosie's outlook on what it means to own the title of artist. So many of us are told that art is a secondary subject to something more serious. But luckily for Rosie, she had someone to recognise what she was and encourage it. And she was brave enough to have faith in her own ability, a rarity in a world so full of judgment on the craft. Rosie says that if you make anything, you are an artist. And if you're an artist, let other jobs support that, not the other way around. Make art your number one priority and show the world exactly who you are. Remember that when you're creating, you're telling your story to the world, your narrative or worldview, and this is something to get out into the world, not sit at home in a portfolio because you like the outcome. Rosie encourages that if you're a visual artist, you make things for people to see. If you're an audio artist, for people to hear. So make sure that they do. Rosie herself believes the process is more precious than the outcome. Being in the moment with whatever you're creating allows it to become a fabric of who you are, and so the outcome is only a still, a capturing of the feeling that created it. This allows her to let go and move swiftly on, for as long as she is creating, she is happy. The moment she stops that flow, she is not. There is sometimes a danger when you're new to art that you cling to those first few paintings and resist selling or creating further due to that feeling of possession. This is understandable, being that you birthed the beauty. But beauty, as Rosie says, needs to be shared and connected with those around us. That way, we all benefit. Plus, you never know who might end up with your piece. Maybe someone who can no longer walk to their favourite beach and sees it through your work. Maybe someone who has never been to a city and is stuck out in the sticks somewhere. Art can be a magical doorway where once there stood a prison. How wonderful that you can provide that key. On getting your art out there, Rosie says to be brave and walk into the galleries that you love and make a human connection. Even if it doesn't work out, you have introduced yourself. I always think of a scene from the film Pretty Woman where the main character is snubbed in a posh shop for looking a certain way. And when her luck changes and she comes back into the shop later in the movie looking fabulous, the shop owners don't recognise her as the person that they were so abrupt with before. And they dote on her, hand and foot. She simply turns around and says, "The way you treated me before, big mistake, huge," and struts out of the shop. Of course, it won't be like that in real life, but of the 80% who might reject your work, there will be 20% who love it. And it will feel even more precious because of that experience. As a consequence, maybe later, the galleries that maybe didn't want your work before might change their minds. By being brave enough to put yourself out there and pursue the leads will mean that you're in the minds of other people. At least then you have half a chance of something happening, as opposed to worrying that it might never happen. If you engage your ideas with the world, then they're out there. And when they're out there, they can be seen. Equally, Rosie says to find spaces that work for you. If not a gallery, maybe a gift shop or coffee shop or shop space. Maybe Etsy or Instagram and other social media sites, or maybe your local art fair might be a great way to begin. Whatever works, become part of the scene and meet other like-minded artists who can support you. A lot of artists set up collective shows these days, which is a perfect way to spread the cost of an exhibition and potentially support a local gallery or space that would welcome the money. Finally, Rosie says, don't be scared. Your work is valid, and whatever it is you want to say through it is important. Rosie shares her worldview through pictures of underwear, landscape, words, and woodwork. She doesn't limit her process or her art, and she's not afraid to provoke conversation. Art can speak for you where you can't find the words in real life yourself. It's a magnificently powerful tool, and equally, you can get away with a lot more when you're cheekily throwing the conversation onto a canvas. Whatever it is that you're embarking on, it's important, it's a priority, and it's totally and unashamedly yours. So take a deep breath and repeat after me. I am an artist, and I claim my space. Now say it even louder. Reach out your arms and look up to the sky or your canvas or your dance shoes, and say it again with absolute focus. And when you're done, begin. As Pablo Picasso once said, painting is just another way of keeping a diary. Art washes away from the soul the dust of everyday life. So, over the holidays, maybe do a little bit of dusting. Thank you so much for spending your time with myself and Rosie today. I truly hope that you have a wonderful and festive week full of joy and happiness, and we will be back with a podcast to bring in the new year. Happy holidays, everyone, from myself, producer and husband Tim, and old man Cooper, the dog. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to the show. If you have a spare moment now, please like, subscribe, and tell me your thoughts in a review on Apple Podcasts, which will really help other people like yourself to find the show. Of course, you can also share the show with your friends by following us at the Brave Moment Podcast on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, or on Twitter at Moment Brave, or just follow the Linktree on all of our social media platforms. It's been so wonderful to have you all here with me again. Please get in touch with your own stories, and remember, your brave moment starts now.